the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
As the year-end giving season approaches, many nonprofits focus on the rush of one-time donations, hoping to maximize support during this critical time. But what if there's a way to look beyond just the holiday season to build a sustainable, long-term donor base? Today, we're talking about the value of recurring donors, those dedicated supporters who give month after month and bring stability well past year-end. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Jena, Education and Community Engagement Manager here at Donorbox. We are here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. Today, I am thrilled to welcome back Chris Barlow, the founder and director of Beeline Marketing. Chris has been working with nonprofits to help them build stronger, more lasting relationships with donors and all that he does. And today, we'll dive into the importance of recurring donors, why they're so critical for long-term success, how to engage them effectively, and how nonprofits can adjust their messaging to attract and retain this type of support. Welcome, Chris. Great to have you back.
Thank you, Jena. It's great to be with you. It's always great to be with you.
I am so excited for today's conversation because if there's one thing I know, it's that our nonprofit community is always looking for ways to keep donors engaged and invested. This is what we all want, is that dependable revenue and stability for our organization. So I want to start with a big picture question. Why is it so essential for nonprofits to build a base of recurring donors? And in your experience, should nonprofits focus on this at year end, or is there a better time for recurring donation efforts?
That is a good question, Jena. And probably if you've been listening to any podcasts or reading anything on recurring donors this year, you'll see from multiple sources that over the last several years, donor retention rate across nonprofits averages to be around 44-45%. And so if we think about that in like school terms, that's like an F. That's really bad. That's not success to keep only less than half of our people. And so I think it's kind of obvious, but it's essential to build recurring donors just for retention sake. The average monthly donor retention rate is around 90%. So it's like double that. You retain most of your donors if they are recurring. And so that is, to me, the main reason why it's so important. And whether we should focus on them on year end or another time of year, I tend to think and have heard from others in the industry that it's actually better to focus on year-end impact and really ask for one-time or year-end gifts and focus on people giving their larger gifts if they can at the end of the year or becoming first-time donors. And part of that is because there's actually an opportunity to, in the new year, really start to put a focus on recurring donors and have to start, activating people, thinking about the year as a whole. So if we're talking about 2025, you thank people for giving in 2024 and asking them to give again, but say, instead of giving $500 like you did in December, would you consider giving us that again, $500 for 2025? But would you consider just making that a monthly $40 gift? Or a monthly $50 gift, and helping them see like, look, we're not wanting you to give more money. Would you just give it over a course of 12 months? I'll also say that you guys just posted in promoting the webinar we're going to do that monthly donors give 42% more than one-time givers on average, because monthly donors are giving monthly. And then if you do an appeal at the year end, they might give again a one-time gift. So that's how you end up getting more. And then finally, Next After has done some studies on this. The most valuable donors on your list that are outside of your major donors are your key multi-year donors who give in 3 years in a row. If you can get someone to give a second time in their first year, their retention rate increases dramatically. And if you can get them to give a third time or give 3 years in a row, those are the people who are going to be your most committed long-term donors. And so if you can get them to become a recurring donor at the beginning, they're going to probably stick with you a long time.
Yes, those retention rates for one time versus recurring, I think are both scary and eye-opening. And to that point, you can ask donors for less money and somehow get more. That's pretty cool. And I think that nonprofits can be intimidated by that ask. A one-time ask, it's an easy thing, but to get someone to walk alongside you in your mission with this commitment and change a behavior can be kind of scary. And I do agree that timing is everything here. So while year end is a peak moment for awareness and that relationship building and warming folks up, it's the months after that can offer a lot of opportunity for that recurring giving. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. What would you say are some common pitfalls organizations should watch out for when they're trying to convert these generous one-time donors into their monthly givers? What would you say there?
Well, and this plays right into that anxiety that organizations feel. I will say that technology has come around now. Donorbox makes it really, really easy to make it so that someone can give a monthly gift. Like that used to be a problem. That's not the friction now. That's not the issue. The actual issue is much simpler than that. The most common mistake is maybe the most obvious one, and that's we aren't telling donors why they should give monthly instead of once. There's actually a number that I found. It's 86% of organizations do not provide a unique reason for why someone should give monthly. So we have our value proposition, right? We tell people, here is why you should give. Here's what we do. And this is the impact you can make through us. And here's how we do it uniquely. We need to answer the question, why should you give to me rather than to any other cause or buy a product that you want for yourself rather than not giving at all? And why should you give monthly? And specifically honing in on that, if organizations take the time to think through what are the reasons why someone should give monthly, we can come up with those. And if we have those reasons in our mind, then we'll be able to just clearly articulate them. And I think some of that anxiety will go away, because if we're feeling anxiety, that's a signal to us that there's some friction there. There's some confusion even in ourselves as to, well, yeah, of course we want people to give multiple gifts, but what's in the donor's interest to do that? And so if we know what's in the donor's interest, we're not going to feel the anxiety. So, reasons like if you want to make an impact, you don't have to give us more money. If you just give us regularly, that actually creates more impact. And here's how. And if you want to make an ongoing impact, you can automate it and make it convenient for yourself. We're all about the subscription economy these days. So make it automated and easier for yourself. So there's the convenience factor. There's what do you want to make an impact? People do want to do that. Here's how to make more impact. And they're like, well, how does this make greater impact? And there's a lot of things we can say, but one big example is just to say, if you could get $1 million today, or you could get an $83,000 monthly gift for the rest of the year. With that lump of money, you kind of have to figure out what you're going to do with it. And you don't know if it's going to continue. You don't know if it's just like a one-off thing and never coming back. But if you have a monthly gift, then we can start planning ahead. We can hire some people. We have the immediate impact and we have the long-term planning. And with that long-term planning, we can actually spend less time on fundraising. We can spend more time in the program. Again, telling the donor how it can change your budgeting, your fundraising, your program impact is ultimately in your donor's best interest.
You just answered my next question, which is perfectly, how can nonprofits stand out among all the noise that's happening right now and set themselves apart for the new year as well? And I think you hit the nail on the head. Something that we've talked a lot about this giving season is your value proposition and your case for support, right? Identifying the problem, your unique solution. So what your nonprofit uniquely solves that makes you different from any organization, and what you need your donors to do and the impact of what they're going to do. Now, something that I've missed while talking about this, I always frame it from that one-time gift perspective. $25 feeds dogs like Peanut for a week. But you're right. What about for the month? What does $25 a month accomplish? Surely it could keep on feeding Peanut, but is there something bigger that feels more impactful, more tangible, that would move someone to give? And you gave a couple of nice examples of some messaging that you can use there. Have you seen any other messaging in the same lane that has really hit the mark for you as you've worked with your clients at Beeline?
Yeah, I have one example from a client and then one personal one. First, some data that I've heard from different sources is that actually we are doing a pretty poor job of thanking recurring donors and making them known that they're actually seen differently and appreciated differently for their ongoing support. And so regularly thanking them will go a long, long way. And then just being human. One of our clients is a Jewish nonprofit. And so on Christmas, their audience is probably not necessarily celebrating Christmas Day. So she wrote an email like, are you getting pizza or Chinese today? Because those are typically the only places that are open. And so it's just an unofficial tradition. And so all the emails that they send are from the director's name. and they have a personal feeling. And so many times she would forward emails of replies that she was getting. It's that kind of response where people are replying to you, where you're building a connection. And it turns someone from just being a subscriber to wanting to support. And it's that kind of connection that will turn people from a one-time supporter they gave once, and then now they feel more connected to you because you're talking to them like a human and you're talking to them like they're a human. And then in terms of how you communicate, I really think standing out in year end, especially when so many messages that people are hearing, is we actually have to be staying on top of mind throughout the year, and we have to be building that relationship throughout the year. And the people who feel connected to us throughout the year, even if it's not like super strong connection, if they are just aware of us, if they have that in the back of their mind, then when you're making your appeals at year end, they're going to be likely to give to you. I think part of it is just not being afraid or being bold to keep communicating and to send a lot of communications. If you have an amazing open rate of your emails of 40%, that means 60% of people aren't even seeing your emails. So if you feel you're repeating yourself, whether throughout the year or even during your end appeals, you send 10, 15 emails in December, don't worry, like most of the people aren't seeing all of those emails, right? I just experienced this myself. So for several months in the spring, I started hearing about like this nonprofit agency or consulting group. It was from someone I trust. They've organized this membership group. I was getting emails about it, but I was ignoring them. But then 2 months ago, I got an email from that person and it was like, hey, if you want to join this community, you can do so, but there's a discount and it's going to end today or in the next day. And I was like, okay, well, I should consider it because there's a deadline now instead of just putting it off. But I still deleted it because the person said, I'm going to send you one more reminder today. And it was really smart because I knew I could delete the email. I didn't have to make a decision right then, but it was stuck in my head all day long. And I was like, okay, I have to make a decision when this other email comes in. And then another consultant posted on LinkedIn praising how helpful the community had been to them. And I thought, okay, I better go look at the landing page. And I saw then, oh yeah, if I sign up, it's at a lower cost. What's the risk? Now, this is totally different from donors, but the lesson to me here is I trusted the person, or the organization, right? And their mission. I trusted this person and the community they created. I just didn't have time to think about it. And it took all of those communications for it to finally sink in. And then finally I took action when there was a deadline. And I think part of the reason why nonprofits do so well, or like why we all depend on year end, is because there's just that deadline. If I'm going to give this year, I have to give now. That's just a reality we live in. And that's also part of the opportunity we have with recurring donors too.
So what I'm hearing from you too is you really need to know who you're talking to. You need to understand your audience. Going back to the pizza or Chinese, getting that email, I'm sure, put a smile on a lot of people's faces, and nonprofits should know who they're talking to and understand their motivations and their behaviors. And like you said, people are busy, people are distracted. 10 emails might seem like an insane number to a lot of people, but studies are also showing we are consuming 15-second content endlessly all day long, and our attention spans are way less than they used to be. And also, not everybody is going to see every single message. They're just not. So, question for you, touch points seem to really be key here. So is there a cycle or a timeline you'd recommend for engaging supporters for recurring giving? And how do you hit that sweet spot where they're still excited to see these emails, but also when you want them to understand how their contributions can impact and when it needs to happen? Does that make sense?
Yeah, first I would say, and I kind of hinted this earlier in our conversation, I think January is a really key time. You take your donors who gave, say, under 1,000 each at the end of the year and put them into a special segment of people where you give them the opportunity to give again for 2025. Thank them first. Thank them in the first email. Let them know the impact they made. And then have another 2-3 emails at least where you lay out that unique recurring donor value proposition and ask them to give the same amount, but split into 12 months. And so that's a place you start. I think another thing is just cultivation, where you're not asking for anything, where you're obviously sharing your stories and impact and encouraging, but also sharing helpful ideas and tips. The same nonprofit I referenced, they would send emails regarding Jewish holidays or Holocaust Memorial or other tips or ideas. And they didn't even necessarily create all this stuff. They would create some things, and they would also curate and say, this other nonprofit that we love has these awesome resources for this particular holiday or other things. And so those kind of cultivation emails, again, help people feel valued and remembered. And then one last thing that was really effective with recurring donors, and I believe Dana Snyder talks a lot about this too, is creating a sense of community, naming your recurring donor community. giving it a sense of identity and purpose. One of our clients' roots, Ethiopia, they have, a special community that they've named for their recurring donors. So I think that's helping people see that, like, we're not just a donor. I didn't just give one gift. I'm actually part of a group of people who are making this vision, this mission real. My wife was just pointing this out to me. Once upon a time, it was the Carnegies and the major philanthropists that they said, I've got all this money. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to build this library. I'm going to do whatever. And they're still obviously large, wealthy philanthropists. But for all the everyday donors, we need the same mindset, and we need to talk about our donors with the same mindset. Like, this is their work. We're just the conduit. They're the ones making it happen. And so creating that sense of identity, I think, is also another important piece of messaging for our recurring donors.
For sure. That community and that consistency builds that trust over time. And it's not just about bombarding your donors or your email list whenever you need something. It's about maintaining that connection year round and making them feel like they're a part of something. So I think that's a really wonderful tip and something that I think most folks need to hear, right? Okay. What would you say to a nonprofit just starting out with recurring giving? I think you've got some really great tips here already, but for organizations who may have started thinking about building a monthly giving program, or they're still building out their recurring donor base, what would you say are the top 3 things they should do before year end or to gear up for the new year?
Yeah. Well, first, write your monthly donor value proposition. Understand why someone should give to you, obviously, in the first place, but why they should give a monthly gift to you rather than a one-time gift, or rather than to another organization, or buy something personal, or not at all. Work on that. Refine it. Send a survey to your current donors and ask them for feedback on it. Second, make sure your donation platform makes it easy to give monthly, right? Make it easy for people to manage their gift, update their payment details. And I would say really key, and this is a learning from Charity Water, make sure that people could sign up as recurring donors through their bank details, because that does not change very often, maybe, hardly ever. Whereas credit cards expire all the time. Anytime you have to update a credit card for a monthly donor, you risk losing them. You will lose some, even if they wanted to keep giving. This is like tied to why is retention rate so low, 44%? It's not because people wouldn't want to keep giving to you. It's just because they're busy. They don't think about it. They don't feel compelled to go through the friction of doing it again. So if you can get someone to become a recurring donor, maybe first on their credit card, and then early on, say, would you please update your payment information with us, and get them to set up under the bank. That's just going to make a huge difference. So the technology, your value proposition, and then finally, you need to make sure you segment your monthly donors, thank them, recognize them, and think about how are you going to create that kind of community identity. Think how will that change our language, how we talk about them, how we treat them. Not that you need to treat them better than regular donors. That's not that. It's just, it is a different group of people. So yeah, those are my main 3 top ideas.
Okay, now as we look ahead, are there any emerging trends or strategies that nonprofits should keep an eye out in 2025, whether that's marketing strategies in general, or especially when it comes to recurring donations? Anything that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say, again, what I mentioned just now is thinking about the new year and really pushing the recurring gifts in the new year rather than as much as year end. When you're thinking about making the ask or communicating this over email, one way you can do that is sharing 2 plans with your donors, saying, look, we have the short-term plan and we have a long-term plan. Which one would you prefer us to see? And if you want to give monthly, that'll actually help us do both. And here's why. And one way we can improve our results, our conversions, our effectiveness is put on your thank you page or confirmation page a survey and ask people, why did you choose to become a recurring donor today? Or send out a survey. Obviously, you can do that too. But if you get someone at the moment they gave, they know all that's what's going through their head right now. And not only will you learn a lot that will help you in just building a relationship with that person, but you can then use the words, the emotions, and the reasons they shared to improve your value proposition. So applying this principle of active listening can really, really help you as you're thinking about how do we communicate to people and how do we tell them why they should give to us and why should they give monthly.
So to summarize that, we've got kind of letting donors choose their own journey in a way, given a way that feels impactful for them, and let them see the results of that. Making sure your case for support highlights the impact of the monthly gifts, making sure that your tech stack is up and ready to work with you, not against you, and make sure that you are getting those additional touch points, listening actively so that you can take those responses and apply that to your strategy for the rest of the year. Okay, now before we wrap up, for those of you wanting to dive even deeper into this topic, Chris will be presenting a workshop hosted by Donorbox on November 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and that is the truth about getting recurring donors and the first way to fix it. And the link to register is in the show notes, so be sure to sign up. Even if you can't attend live, everyone who registers will get access to the recording. Chris, this has been such a fun conversation today. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. I know that our listeners will be walking away with tons of actionable ideas, things that they need to do right away that will make a big impact.
Awesome. Thank you, Jena. Looking forward to the webinar.
And thank you for joining us on the Nonprofit Podcast. I hope you've left with the confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Be sure to click the download button on your podcast player, then leave the Nonprofit Podcast a review or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review helps others find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. Until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, it's not just happiness, it's fulfillment. And we believe it should be available to everyone, from frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers. Our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.